Welcome. My name is Alan Bateman. I'm the director of the Communicable Disease Division at the State Lab. I want to welcome you all to this technical conference. Nice to see everybody. I know we have a few more trickling in. It's close to 80 or 85 people who signed up this year, which is really solid number. Great to see. Glad you could all make it. I know it's an early morning to leave home and drive here, so really appreciate all your time to make it and want to make this as worthwhile for you as possible. So I'm going to give a quick intro to things. First off, quick little bit about networking, a couple updates from us at the State Lab, and then a little background on the Wisconsin Clinical Lab Network, which you may know might be review or might be new, and then also a little bit on our Laboratory Technical Advisory Group, or LabTag. And then I'll pass it off to our new WCLN coordinator, Nick, to coordinate the rest of the day. All right, so first off, I want to really acknowledge that this is definitely a learning, continuing education meeting, but also great for networking. I think you all have already jumped into that, really talking with both colleagues as well as others at other labs around the state. That's what these in-person meetings are for. It's for getting to know each other, and it's really good to have those connections, both from us to you all, from clinical labs, and clinical lab to clinical lab people. And there's so many benefits to this that we've seen over the years, all of the things that are listed here, and really importantly, just getting to know each other to be able to reach out whenever something is weird, whenever you might have an outbreak, whenever you might have some random emergency, either to reach out to your colleagues in other clinical labs or to us at the State Lab. I really like this quote of, there we go, an emergency is not the time to exchange business cards. So that's what we're here to do today, as well as learn about technical aspects of sepsis and clinical micro. So first off, I want to kick it off with an iClicker question. I will say this is the last conference we're going to be using these old technology iClickers. We had a few speakers who really love them, and so we're doing it for one last time, but all of our future things we'll do using smartphones, Kahoot, other types of things like that. So let me get this started first off. What is your background? Clinical lab micro specialist, clinical lab non-micro, public health official, or something else? And if you choose other, I may or may not ask you to raise your hand and say what your background is. Let's see. We got 48 responses. That's pretty good. Let's see where we're at here. So definitely mostly clinical micro, which makes sense. That's exactly the people that this is for. Few public health lab people. I think I might know you all. No public health officials, and any others? Any volunteers for who's an other and what their background is?
We have a couple pharmacists.
Oh, perfect. Yes, we have some pharmacists. All right. And then one last getting to know you. How much experience do you have in clinical or public health lab or in pharmacy? And I'll get this one started too. All righty. Wow, pretty good range there. Quite a few experience, but love to see some people with 0 to 2 and 3 to 5 years of experience too. Nice to see that range. All right, so definitely some of the things I'll talk about will be review for some and maybe new for others. All right, so first, quick updates from the State Lab. We have a new director, Rudy Johnson. He started back last fall, and he is a toxicologist by training. And then he also spent 20 years at the CDC working with and actually eventually directing the LRNC, the Lab Response Network for Chemical Emergency, Chemical Threats, Chemical Terrorism. And then more recently, the past few years, he's been at the federal VA running some research epidemiology studies. And he really has done a lot of good things, even in his first couple months at State Lab, so we're really excited about that. And he's planning on attending one of our regional meetings in September, probably the one in Madison since it's nearby where we are. Second update is logistics and courier-wise. So we have a statewide courier called Purple Mountain. Many of you might know this, and you have to pick up the phone and call them to get them to come pick specimens up for our surveillance. Soon we're going to be switching over to a portal online for this. Types of specimens for this are bacterial and viral specimens for surveillance, measles, TB, and a few others. But this will be an online portal. It'll feel pretty similar to the newborn screening portal of the state lab, if you know that one. And we'll be rolling this out over the next month or two, and more info will come via email. So I just wanted to make you aware this is a thing that's happening. Looks like a general portal. This is what it'll look like. And we'll have really good tracking information that we'll be able to actually know where the specimens are and be able to track them better than we currently can. So we're looking forward to this process improvement, and I think the rollout should be relatively smooth. Couple more updates. We are actively working on a new state lab website. We've said this for a couple years now, but there's actually a really good project moving through, and I'm really hopeful that by the end of this year there will be a new state lab website which will be more modern and more streamlined. Right now we have a ton of information there. Really want to make it as streamlined and useful as possible. And then also a quick reminder, just last year we went live with a new clinical test directory. This is our webpage right here, and the main button right there, clinical test directory for that search. We'll take you here to search. You can click way at the bottom for everything communicable disease, or search using the search bar. And then this is generally what it looks like with each of the overviews of details here. So it really has improved to be a modern look, and we can add more details, more information. Hopefully that's already been a solid improvement that you've seen. Okay, those are our quick updates from the state lab. Now a little bit of background on the Wisconsin Clinical Lab Network. Again, many of you might know some of this, but it'll be a good review. So first off, I really want to say it is nationally recognized as the gold standard clinical lab network in the country. We get asked multiple times per year from other states, how do you do this? How do you engage your clinical labs? How do you get surveillance specimens? How do you do great both surveillance and outbreak response? And our answer always is Wisconsin Clinical Lab Network. And we do all these things under the umbrella of that. And it leads to really strong surveillance. Just one example is this NERVS, National Respiratory and Enteric Virus Surveillance System. This is the map of labs that contribute data to this nationally. And obviously you can see Wisconsin just lights up right there. We love sharing this particular slide because it just shows how engaged clinical labs are in Wisconsin and how the WCLN does lead to very strong surveillance in the state. So overall, the WCLN is an all hazards network of labs. So that means we have networking and surveillance for whatever comes next, whatever emerging pathogen or emerging infectious disease there might be. It's about 130 clinical and a couple public health labs, and about 40 or 45 of those meet something called the Sentinel Clinical Lab definition to perform rule-out testing for bioterror agents. And essentially that is, these labs perform full microbiology and are able to do that type of workup. We at the state lab are the ones that coordinate the clinical lab network, but we don't direct it or lead it necessarily. We really rely on our partners in the Laboratory Technical Advisory Group, or LabTag, to help with that. And I'll talk about them in just a little bit. And there are a few main core activities that we do for WCLN. A lot of training and education, like today. We do our best to really facilitate communication amongst everyone in the network, and a lot of it is for our public health surveillance, and also for that emergency response, where we do emergency response drills, communications about that, and then true emergencies. Measles outbreaks, obviously COVID back in the day was the biggest response ever for that, and we really leveraged the WCLN to respond to that. So training and education, I want to give you just a broad picture view of all the things we do in this realm. We do offer 8 free webinars per year. All of this has free PACE credit, continuing education credit. And then we have a series of in-person meetings. There's this one in April, right now. We have one coming up next month, Virology Conference in Madison. It is May 28th scheduled. Here's the information about it that we've sent through our lab messages. QR code's right there if you want to scan while I'm talking through the rest of the slide to sign up, but it's an all-day at the Fluno Center in Madison. Then we have our regional meetings that many of you have been to, where we have the same whole day in-person meeting in Eau Claire, Appleton, Green Bay region, and Madison. And then finally, our TB and other mycobacteria conference in November. And all of this is under the guise of WCLN overall for free education for you all to stay up on cutting edge methods and information. We also try to do the best we can to facilitate communication. We have at least a monthly newsletter. This is the most recent one that we sent out to talk about general news items in infectious disease, activities that we're offering coming up for WCLN, and then other things that we hear from DHS or from CDC, those HANs, those health alert networks, and other information to keep you all informed on what's changing in the realm of infectious disease. We do have a listserv as well, and that is for just Wisconsin clinical laboratorians, not anyone. It's like DivC or ClinMicroNet, but those are national by ASN. This is just for Wisconsin. Here's one recently from Dick Dern down in the bottom left about lab identification and emerging pathogenic molds. And then we do really try to have that networking time, breaks and lunches at these in-person meetings. And we also do a series of in-person visits to clinical labs, both to share the types of materials that we have, as well as to hear from you all how things are going and how we can help in the future. Here's what I wanted to highlight from Eric Munson, one of our lab tag members who really contributes a whole lot with continuing education. We have an upcoming webinar later this month about annual CLSI M100 updates, and then he did a series of 2 live shows, basically, in January and February on foundational training for entry-level clinical microbiology skills. And I know a few of you have shared these with your early career microbiologist, and really good, solid foundational information there. So these are available on our website, and the recorded M100 one will be as well after he gives it. So public health surveillance-wise, we know that we request a whole lot of data, samples, isolates from you all for our various surveillance programs that we're involved in. And we really value that. We don't want to be a black box, and so we want to summarize that data, collate it, and share it with you as best as possible. In our data summaries and surveillance reports, we do a lot with GI, respiratory, some bacteria, as well as mycobacteriology. So to find things, again, on our website, I always just search WSLH surveillance to get to right here. And we have a lab-based surveillance plan each year that we put out. It's about 30 or 40 pages. If you haven't seen it, we have some extra copies out by the table. And this is an overview of the national programs we're a part of and the importance of why it's important to contribute to them, to be a part of them. And then we also have our submission requests that we have for these various programs, as well as some data summaries at the end. So that's once per year, and we really do take the time every summer to review it and try to pare it down as much as possible, make it as efficient as possible to not be requesting things that we don't use. On the data summary side, every other week we have a snapshot of summaries right here from the same website, and that is quite busy because we want to keep it just to 2 pages, and it's a whole lot of information to combine in there for respiratory, GI, and other up-to-date things that are happening. So overall, we really value the WCLN. It is the foundation of so much that we do at the state lab, and it's we are looked at nationally as a strong state lab because, in part, we have this strong network. I wrote a paper with a few of the lab tag members a few years ago, but more recently, just last year, we had a Journal of Clinical Micro publication about BioFire GI and how we saw false positives for Campylobacter in those. And it was because of our connections with a couple of key clinical labs that we were able to identify it originally and then also investigate and figure out what was really going on here. This was only possible because of WCLN connections as well. So a lot of side benefits as well to this. All right, I think I've actually mentioned most of this, but essentially it's partnering for the best both for public health and for clinical labs as well to really see value in these connections. All right, so lab tag, laboratory, it's the Wisconsin Clinical Lab Network Technical Advisory Group that we call lab tag, and essentially it is the magic sauce that makes WCLN work. It's the expert group that really comes together to drive our continuing education each year. Overall, it is 1 member from each of 7 regions here. There are 7 emergency response regions that are the same regions that DHS broke the state into. So there's 1 member for each of those regions, as well as a couple at-large members. And we really try to make this reflective of different types of clinical labs. So different types of labs and different levels of experience as well, from PhD level directors to microbiology techs and everywhere in between. And the time commitment for this is an annual face-to-face meeting in November, as well as monthly calls. So it's hopefully not too much of a time commitment, and people really do see benefit from being a part of this. And we do have, if you want to learn more, written mission, objectives, and expectations on our website, all about lab tag. So for us at the state lab, we really use lab tag to provide insights into what's happening in the clinical labs. We are in a public health lab using similar technology, but in different ways, different ultimate purposes. We really want to hear and learn about what's going well and what can be improved on in clinical labs and how we can help. We truly value the partnership, and particularly the help with educational events today is mostly driven by LabTag. We had our in-person meeting back in November where we went through the previous year's educational things to review how they went and then plan this year. And within about a half hour of open discussion amongst the group, we had come down to, all right, it's going to be sepsis, and we're going to do a couple different talks and a discussion and a breakout session, and we already had things all sketched out. So the LabTag group really does drive a lot of our continuing education. And the LabTag members themselves have found a lot of benefits for this, both the networking amongst themselves, as well as having that small focus group to bounce ideas off of, and really to see how clinical microbiology fits into public health and to advocate for clinical micro in the state. Obviously, there are teaching opportunities. These LabTag meetings, many people tell me that they're one of their favorite meetings all year because things actually get done in them, and it's really good open discussion. No one comes in their particular role of director, manager, supervisor, microbiologist. We all just come together as members of LabTag to discuss things. And there have been a couple of people who have mentioned individual personal benefits of being promoted due to their known connections with other clinical laboratorians in the state. And Eric Munson's antibiotic surveillance network has been jump-started and maintained through connections with WCLN and LabTag. So, with that, I'll transition to saying we currently have an opening in Region 4, right here in the western area. So if you are from there and you're interested, there's a QR code down below, or talk with Nick. We are currently recruiting for that position right now. And with that, I will mention the most exciting update from the State Lab this year is we have a brand new WCLN coordinator, Nick Zumwald. He's only been here a month or so, but we've thrown him right in the deep end. He's learned a whole lot about a lot of the technical conference things that we do, and he's going to be the coordinator for the rest of the day. So please join me in welcoming him.
Thanks, Al, for saving me 5 minutes here to briefly introduce the day. Before I introduce the day, I want to introduce myself. Okay, so like Al said, I'm the new guy here. You probably saw it in the lab message. My name is Nick Zumwald. And you're probably wondering why I'm here or who I am. I have a background in microbiology and immunology. I went to UW-Madison, got my molecular biology degree, and then I really like to incorporate a lot of different things. So I'm a huge comic book nerd, a huge superhero fan, and I have a strong interest in immunology. And as you can assume, right, superheroes and bad guys, right, host interactions with pathogens that host pathogen arm race. I'm obsessed about it, okay? I'm so obsessed about it, I went off and got my PhD in immunology and microbiology and cancer biology. And it was because of very influential books in the late 90s and early 2000s spearheaded my interest to get involved in infectious disease, okay? Why I'm so passionate about the immune system and how we can use our immune system as a superhero to essentially eliminate, the bad guys that we are inundated with in our daily lives. And it was because of books like The Hot Zone and The Demon in the Freezer that really spearheaded my interest in understanding basic biology, right? How do viruses work, or how do bacteria work, or how do white blood cells and immune cells, right, combat that, and how do they drive defenses and immunological memory? And those are the types of questions that I really got excited about. And as a result of that, I went off to the University of Minnesota, got my PhD, like I said, in immunology. So I'm one of those despised hybrids that actually root for both the Badgers and the Gophers, okay? And I'm also a Vikings fan, so if you need me to stop my presentation right now, I can. I'm sorry, okay? It just put me into your spam folder right now. But I do like rooting for both, and I had a highly successful career at the lab bench, studying primarily immune cells in human breast tissue and understanding how we can turn them on to combat individuals with high risk of breast cancer. Okay, so I was working right at the interface of characterizing the microbiome in the human breast, understanding how we can turn off and on certain immune cells, and hoping to eliminate breast cancer. And I know this is a microbiology event, but cancer's close enough from a pathology perspective that I thought it was appropriate to just highlight a few of the important papers that I've been involved in over the course of my career especially in the medical microbiology immunology department at UW-Madison. I then transitioned that, actually, I got the itch for teaching. I was able to develop some immunology classes, I taught some microbiology labs, transitioned over to the Department of Genetics, have a very high rating. I'll rate my professor if anybody cares. Undergraduates do, okay? They really, really care about high ratings. And I also am extremely interested in education, continuing education. They call it the science of teaching and instruction, the science of pedagogy. And I'm really interested in bringing digital, okay, tools, not only into the classroom anymore, but into your life, okay? And how can I coordinate, okay, my educational practices, okay, and my experience to make your lives more easier, okay? And so I've also been involved in winning awards on campus regarding, like pedagogy practices, understanding how we can interface not only with students better, but with the public better. Okay, my major passion is science communication, okay, elevating the scientific literacy of not only students, not only you, but also the public in general. And so, due to uncertainty in the budget landscape, as we all know, and due to uncertainty in teaching classes from semester to semester basis, and actually, to be completely honest, teaching professors don't get tenureship. So I started to rethink my long-term goals, okay? And I was like, why am I still in science? Why is science interesting? And originally I thought it was because I loved the basic research. I'd spent over a decade, almost 2 decades at the lab bench, and I was like, I'm not really sure I love basic research, right? I love teaching, I love education, but why am I in science in the first place? So I thought back to the books that I had read back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? And then there were the anthrax documents that came out, and I was thinking, you know what, maybe I love those books not because I'm interested in how Ebola binds to host cells. Maybe I'm interested in these books because of understanding surveillance, right? Understanding public health, the flip side of that basic research token, right? What is actually happening, boots on the ground, every single day in your microbiology labs, right? Real life, day-to-day stuff, okay? Surveillance and diagnostics. That's what's changing the world. That's what's changing patient behavior and giving the best health care, okay, in practice, right, to the people that we interact with and our loved ones. And so I was thinking, well, maybe it's not basic research. Maybe what I want to do is stop the next zombie apocalypse, right? Public health care, right? The hot zone, right? The demon in the freezer, stopping these pandemics, understanding how outbreaks work, okay, and interfacing with all of you to make Wisconsin a healthier place. So my place in the puzzle is my communication skills, 15 years at the lab bench, so I know how to talk the language of science, okay? That's my bread and butter. I love talking science. I also love talking sports and horror fiction and all that stuff, but I really, really love immunology and microbiology. I have over 8 years in the lecture hall, okay, developing a wide variety of different courses. My number one goal is educating and elevating the public scientific literacy, okay? And that means helping you as well. Figure out your challenges and your hiccups, okay? And how can we at the state lab help make your lives easier, okay? For the betterment of Wisconsin. So I'm here to coordinate, I'm here to make your work more fulfilling and more successful by building connections and helping you solve challenges. So that's me, and that's my background and my story. When Alan and Alana had been like, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? I was like, well, I could just stand up and wave, or I could talk about the origin story, right? All good superheroes have them, all right? Okay. All right, I'm done being cheesy.